Nobody expected Caroline Levitt to cross that line, but when she confronted Ilhan Omar during live television with an unanticipated retort, the internet erupted. Political debates frequently become heated, yet something about this particular exchange, this precise moment, felt distinctly different. You could perceive it immediately from the first question presented on national broadcast. It was Tuesday evening, shortly after 7 p.m., during a live transmission of American Roundtable, a primetime political forum hosted from a studio near Sacramento, California. Caroline Levitt sat beneath the cool gleam of studio lighting, her expression composed, hands gently folded across the desk. To her left, Representative Ilhan Omar leaned forward, attentive. The show's producer had promised spirited dialogue, but no one anticipated the fireworks that followed. The discussion began traditionally with questions regarding electoral integrity and public confidence, but within 3 minutes, Omar pivoted. She launched into a pointed critique of what she termed growing extremism and right-wing rhetoric, accusing conservative leaders of fostering paranoia and fear. Levitt remained composed, she listened attentively, and when the host directed attention to her, she leaned slightly forward, eyes locked on Omar. "Congresswoman," she stated evenly, "I find it interesting that you denounce extremism while ignoring the divisive, inflammatory language emanating from your own party. Let's examine facts here." A pause followed, not complete silence, but that hushed anticipation when something authentic is imminent. Caroline didn't reach for notes, she didn't need them. "You once claimed certain U.S. policies were all about the Benjamins. That wasn't merely taken out of context, that was the context. When asked to clarify, you doubled down. You've labeled parts of America racist, backward, uneducated, yet when Republicans highlight legitimate concerns, suddenly we're fear-mongering. You can't demand nuance while refusing to offer any yourself." Omar's eyebrows rose, studio lights reflected momentarily in her eyes. For a second, she remained silent. That second, that hesitation, that breath, would be replayed in slow motion across thousands of screens within hours. Caroline continued, "This isn't about partisan politics but accountability. If a Republican had expressed half your statements, their career would have ended. Yet here you are, positioning yourself as a moral authority while ignoring the division your words have helped create." Her voice contained no theatrics, no elevated tone, just calm, controlled deliberation. The host attempted redirection. "Let's focus on solutions," he interjected, but Omar waved him off. "I have every right to critique systems of power," she responded sharply, "especially when they fail communities I represent." Levitt nodded slowly. "As do we. But let's not pretend critique grants anyone liberty to dehumanize, divide, or rewrite engagement rules depending on who's speaking." Silence returned, but now weighted with significance. Viewers at home didn't scroll away, they leaned closer. They were witnessing something that felt unscripted, authentic. It felt like someone challenging double standards with precision and restraint. By segment's end, social media was already ablaze. Clips of Caroline's rebuttal were being edited, captioned, posted with tags like "finally someone says it," and "she came prepared." It transcended political theater. It felt like generational shift, where a fresh voice entered the stage and dared challenge established narratives without shouting, without anger, without retreating. But the story continued beyond that. What occurred after cameras stopped rolling truly transformed the narrative. The show cut to commercial. The set fell into that brief, peculiar quiet that always followed such segments, part tension, part disbelief. A studio assistant distributed water bottles to panelists. The host whispered something to his producer through his earpiece, likely scrambling to adjust the next segment's atmosphere. But Caroline remained motionless, her expression unreadable. Ilhan Omar leaned back, glanced toward the ceiling, then shifted slightly, not from defeat but reflection. The gesture was subtle, almost imperceptible but present. Caroline didn't gloat, didn't smile or seek validation from fellow panelists. She simply sat quietly, adjusting her blazer sleeve, waiting. Several feet behind cameras, floor manager Paula, middle-aged with slightly crooked glasses, watched the screen and murmured, "She shut that down cleanly." She didn't say it as partisan supporter but as someone acknowledging a perfect chess move, a moment of clarity cutting through noise. Backstage, team phones began vibrating incessantly, texts, notifications, calls. Levitt's chief advisor Morgan Temple checked trending topics. Caroline's name had reached number 4 nationally, surpassing sports and entertainment headlines. The clip was already uploaded. Someone from media team had edited the exchange into a 90-second segment and distributed it through official channels. By the time Caroline left the set and entered the hallway, it had exceeded 200,000 views on one platform alone. "Let's use the side exit," Morgan suggested. "There's media waiting at front entrance, reporters, some activists too."
You dro blot to nicht. Caroline exhalet sharply. Note the intention.
No, Morgan agreed, but you didn't flinch. Outside, the air carried faint fried food aroma from a nearby vendor.
Caroline walked briskly down the alley beside the studio, stepping over a small soda puddle gleaming under flickering orange streetlight.
They reached the car just as someone called her name from the corner. A woman, mid-30s, wearing jeans and a jacket too thin for evening chill, jogged toward them, already recording on her phone. Caroline, she said breathlessly, I just wanted to say that was extraordinary. Seriously, I've never heard anyone challenge her like that. Caroline hesitated. This wasn't confrontational, no angry protest signs, just genuine curiosity. I simply stated my beliefs, Caroline replied.
The woman nodded.
I don't support everything you stand for, but tonight you made me think, and that rarely happens anymore. Caroline thanked her, entered the car, and closed the door. Inside, the silence felt heavier somehow, not uncomfortable, just profound.
Morgen glangst over. You realize this will intensify tomorrow.
Caroline continued staring through the window. They'll target me, she said, as they always do. Morgan paused momentarily, then shrugged. Perhaps, but they'll have to confront truth first. Next morning, major networks replayed the segment continuously. Political commentators across the spectrum debated the exchange, but even Caroline's critics admitted she maintained composure, avoided personal attacks, she held firm. On one program, a former Democratic strategist leaned toward the camera and said, Look, I oppose her politics, but that moment was surgical precise. She exposed a blind spot we've harbored for years, and did so without raising her voice. But not everyone applauded. Omar supporters called it a trap, a coordinated ambush designed to humiliate. Protests were organized in various cities. Hashtags like hashtag Stand with Ilhan and hashtag Caroline Out trended simultaneously with others like hashtag Finally Truth and hashtag Levitt Logic. That evening, Caroline's father, retired Navy, now operating a mechanic shop in rural Indiana, called her cell. He rarely spoke much during calls, but this time cleared his throat and said, Saw the thing. You didn't blink. Your grandfather would have appreciated that. That was all, that was everything she needed. But just as tensions appeared to settle, someone from Caroline's past suddenly emerged with a warning that would throw everything into chaos. 2 days after the debate aired, Caroline was scheduled for a relaxed interview at a local affiliate in Boise, Idaho. It was intended as low-key, a respite from national spotlight, an opportunity to discuss policy and redirect focus from the viral confrontation. But nothing that day proceeded as planned. She arrived at the station around 2 p.m., light drizzle tapped against the SUV windshield as it entered the small parking area. Caroline exited, pulled her coat tighter, and walked inside. The station's producer, a thin man in his late 40s named Ronnie, approached her in the lobby, his expression tense, tight lips, nervous hands. Something seemed wrong. Caroline, he began, we've had a last-minute request, sort of unexpected visitor situation. Caroline paused.
August.
Not for broadcast, he quickly assured. She's here to meet you privately. Says you knew her from Atwood High School days. Caroline blinked. Atwood, a name she hadn't pronounced in years. Ronnie gestured down the corridor toward a side office.
She's waiting Tere.
Said it wouldn't exceed 5 minutes. Appears serious. Against better judgment, Caroline followed. Inside the small room sat a woman with auburn hair tucked into a faded green scarf. She looked exhausted but familiar. Her identity registered with Caroline immediately.
Miranda Beck. Miranda Stott. You remember? Caroline nodded slowly. Yes, I remember.
They hadn't communicated in nearly a decade, not since graduation. Back then, Miranda was the quiet one, always in back row, observant with sharp eyes. She had reputation for knowing things before others, like who was lying, who was cheating, who was concealing something. Now she appeared worn down, as if life had been more challenging than anticipated. I wouldn't approach you unless absolutely necessary, Miranda said. You know I avoid attention. Caroline crossed her arms.
So VHY now.
Miranda withdrew a folded paper from her coat pocket and slid it across the desk. These appeared in a forum I moderated, not just screenshots, complete transcripts. Some date back years. It's serious, Caroline, and they're attempting to connect your name to it. Caroline examined the printout. Her name appeared in the margins of a thread discussing political strategy, phrased to suggest she personally endorsed policies she'd never supported, some even attributed to usernames she never used. This is fabricated. I know, but it's convincing, really convincing. Whoever created it knows how to forge activity logs, IP matches, even digital footprints. I traced several. The patterns match a shell organization operating from Tucson. They've done this previously. Caroline felt weight settle in her chest, not fear, determination.
VHY tel mesis. Miranda hesitated.
Because I'm indebted to you. Back then, when nobody defended me, you did. One time, one moment, it mattered. I'm returning the favor before this escalates. Caroline folded the paper, placed it in her purse.
Wat schuldi du?
Get ahead of it. Someone's trying to destroy your credibility, and after that debate, they're motivated. Caroline thanked her quietly, opened the door, and returned to the hallway. Her team waited near the studio entrance, confused by the delay.
What happened? Morgan asked.
Caroline didn't immediately respond. She gazed toward the window where rain had intensified to steady downpour.
She couldn't afford hesitation.
We have a situation, she finally said, but it won't deter us. She proceeded with the interview as if nothing had happened, answering questions with the same poise and clarity as always. But mentally, the battle lines were shifting. This wasn't merely politics anymore, it was personal. But if they expected her to retreat quietly, they would be sorely mistaken. By Thursday morning, Caroline was already flying back to Washington. The turbulence was minimal, but the anxiety wasn't. Morgan sat beside her, laptop open, phone vibrating repeatedly. Opposite them, Devin, her communications director, scrolled through a spreadsheet of trending keywords and sentiment analysis. Damage hasn't begun yet, he said without looking up, but we have approximately 12 hours before this ignites. Caroline stared through the window, fingers interlocked in her lap. And when it does? We respond swiftly, precisely, and boringly, Devin replied. Morgan raised an eyebrow. Boringly.
Yes.
Don't amplify it, don't escalate it. We treat it like administrative error. If we become emotional, we give it power. If we remain clinical, we control the tempo. Caroline nodded. She appreciated that, controlled, intelligent, quiet power always outlasted noise. But internally, she understood this wasn't simply about narrative management. Whoever created this forgery had conducted thorough research. They knew how to plant doubt, just enough to make people question, not enough to prove malicious intent. And if there's one thing voters despised more than dishonesty, it was uncertainty. When they landed in D.C., early evening had arrived. Rain streaked the SUV windshield as they departed the airport. The city appeared tired. Wet streets, gray skies, traffic thick as molasses. Back at campaign headquarters, they convened emergency meeting inside the war room. Long table, 2 whiteboards, dozen half-empty coffee cups. Caroline stood at front, still wearing the same blazer from her earlier interview. Let's review what we know, she said. Miranda had already emailed more detailed report with screenshots, timestamps, and technical traces. Devin projected them on screen. The forged posts appear on 3 different forums, he explained, all fringe political boards. Someone's attempting to construct narrative that you supported surveillance policies in 2016 that you never publicly addressed.
VHY surveillance. Morgan questioned.
Because it's effective, the idea that you're young, inexperienced, yet already part of the establishment. They're attempting to discredit you before your profile expands. Caroline crossed her arms.
So was orchestratinget. Devin advanced to next slide.
Anonymous accounts, but we're beginning to trace common IP range from Arizona, same ones used against 2 other conservative candidates last year.
Morgan leaned forward.
This seems orchestrated. It is, Devin confirmed, and it originates from someone with resources. Caroline massaged her temples.
Okay.
We address this discreetly. Devin, prepare public statement, nothing defensive, just factual. Morgan, begin soft outreach to local affiliates, give them advance notice so they don't feel blindsided.
And Miranda?
She's already agreed to publicly testify if necessary, Morgan said. Let's avoid involving her unless absolutely required. I owe her that much. They worked deep into night, pizza boxes stacked in corner, phones ringing, screens glowing. It wasn't glamorous, but it was authentic, real people combating shadows with keyboards and caffeine. By morning, the statement was published. It read like technical correction, not emotional plea. Recent online claims regarding Caroline Levitt's past policy positions are based on fabricated content traced to anonymous sources. No such statements were ever made, and internal investigations confirmed the forgeries. It worked. Gradually, the clamor subsided. Not disappeared but paused, enough for Caroline to breathe, at least momentarily. She took afternoon walk through Lafayette Park, coat pulled tight against the wind. Sidewalks were quiet, air crisp. At one point, an older man, gray beard, heavy coat, backpack over one shoulder, approached. "You're that woman from television," he said.
She smiled.
"One of them. You don't speak like others. That's why they fear you." He didn't await response, just continued walking. Caroline remained still, watching him leave, hands in pockets. That single comment lingered with her, not because it was complimentary, but because it was truthful. But the calm wouldn't last, because someone had just leaked portion of her team's internal files to major outlet, and the real storm approached. It struck at 3:17 p.m. Saturday. Caroline was at her aunt's house in Spokane, attempting to preserve one quiet day before campaign intensified again. She'd barely started her late lunch, grilled chicken, no bun, when her phone displayed 5 missed calls and message from Morgan reading, "Call me now," in capitals. She stepped into hallway and dialed.
No greeting.
"They've published it." Caroline remained steady. "What specifically?" "An excerpt from our internal memo, projected strategy notes, communications rotation schedule, even rough speech draft we abandoned after Iowa. It's all published in Politico, full article." For a moment, there was nothing except low hum of household behind her. Her aunt laughing in kitchen, cousin requesting missing charger. Then Caroline approached front door, opened it, and stepped outside into cold. "Damage contained for now," Morgan continued, "but they're portraying it as if your team planned misinformation campaign about Omar's voting record. They're avoiding the term smear, but it's implied." "That draft was never approved," Caroline stated. "It was never even presented to me." "I know, but context becomes irrelevant if people only read headlines." Caroline sat on porch steps, pulling coat tighter. A neighbor's dog barked distantly. Somewhere, wind chime moved gently. "Who accessed that file?" she asked. "We checked, only 4 individuals.
2 in-house, 2 remote.
We're investigating. Seems internal."
Caroline gaset skyward. Overcast, heavy, low.
She felt its weight behind her eyes. "What's our approach?" she finally asked.
Morgan hesitated.
"We could disregard it, let it dissipate naturally. Or you could address it publicly, state it was stolen draft, mischaracterized. Redirect focus toward whoever leaked it."
Caroline slowly shook her head. "No, not this instance."
"If I speak publicly, I do so on my terms." She ended call, inhaled deeply, and stood. Her aunt waved from kitchen window, mouthing something about dessert. Caroline returned faint smile, then walked to her car and drove directly to airport. That night, she broadcast live from home office. No team, no elaborate setup, just herself, camera and chair.
She looked into lens.
"I've remained silent believing this would pass, that truth would prevail. But silence protects nobody, not truly. This week, someone leaked draft document from within my team. It was unauthorized, I never reviewed it, but it existed, and I won't deny that."
She paused.
"Here's what I will say, if the worst they can reveal is file we never implemented, perhaps I'm succeeding. Perhaps speaking truth calmly and clearly is what genuinely threatens them. So let me be clear, no, I won't employ smear tactics. No, I don't need to distort anyone's record. The facts resonate powerfully enough." Within minutes, the clip spread across all major platforms. Reaction was mixed but substantial. Some praised the honesty, others intensified outrage. But for many, especially moderate centrists, it mattered. It demonstrated something rare in contemporary politics: refusal to deflect. The following day, Arizona poll showed 6-point increase in her favorability among independent voters. Back at headquarters, Devin reclined in his chair, grinning. She just absorbed the leak and transformed it into advantage.
Morgan sipped coffee.
Not advantage, just honesty. That's what they can't combat. But just when they believed the worst had passed, anonymous whistleblower contacted them, offering evidence that the leak represented part of larger campaign, and Caroline was merely one name on extended list. It arrived through private Proton Mail account established for press inquiries, one Devin checked twice daily, usually containing spam, unsolicited pitches, or bizarre messages. But this time, the subject line stood out: "She's not the only one. I can prove it." The sender identified as Asher41, no attachments, just message stating, "You're targeted within multi-candidate takedown operation. I helped build the system, now want out."
If you want evidence, meet me discreetly. I'll bring everything.
Followed by location details: 9 p.m. Sunday, gas station, Flagstaff, Arizona. Devon didn't immediately inform Caroline.
He consultet morgen first.
This could be trap, she said flatly. You recognize that? I do, but if legitimate, we can't ignore it. They debated an hour. Finally Morgan decided.
I'm going, she said. Alone.
You remain with her. When Caroline discovered this hours later, she didn't protest, not because she agreed, but because instinctively she knew Morgan was uniquely capable of handling such scenario without wavering. That Sunday night, Morgan pulled into 24-hour Shell station outskirts of Flagstaff. The establishment appeared unchanged since late 90s, buzzing fluorescent lights, cracked pavement, elderly attendant behind counter reading worn paperback. Minutes after 9, tan Jeep Cherokee arrived. A man exited, hood raised, face barely visible in dim light. He approached passenger side of Morgan's rental, entering without speaking.
Are you Asher? She asked. He nodded once. Not my Aktualname.
Didn't assume it was. He reached inside coat, producing thumb drive. This contains logs, chat transcripts, source code fragments, and correspondence between accounts that executed leaks.
Jure not merely target. Jure target number 4.
For among how many?
Tierten. All emerging voice. Party affiliation irrelevant.
Objective is chaos. Fracture the middle, erode trust, then present people alternatives they never sought.
Wo's die Rechtinget? He paused. Not individual entity, consortium.
Private security firms, legacy packs, several international players behind scenes. They're filtering information through message boards and media freelancers. Designed to appear like organic outrage. Morgan examined the drive. Why provide this to me? I constructed their pipeline. Then they deployed it against someone I knew. That crossed my boundary. He handed it over, opened door, and before she could inquire further, departed. Back in D.C., team analyzed files. Devon worked overnight with cybersecurity think tank contact from Fort Collins. In D.C. control room, team observed developments across wall of screens. Caroline, standing behind tech desk, inhaled deeply and asked, "Who produced that edit?" Devon scrolled rapidly. It's been reposted hundreds of times, but original upload came from verified account in Sedona, Arizona, belongs to media consultant connected to groups mentioned in whistleblower files.
Coordinated again, Morgan murmured.
They want character assassination, Devon added, and they're proficient. Caroline remained silent. She walked to room center, surveyed faces that had worked alongside her for months, and quietly asked, "How should we respond?"
Morgen steppet forward.
We don't, not directly. Let it burn out naturally. Every word we speak adds oxygen to flames. We maintain course, stay on message. But attacks continued. That afternoon, someone hacked Caroline's campaign website. Visitors redirected to blank page displaying message, "This is what happens when you lie." It remained inaccessible 6 hours before tech team restored it. Then came falsified emails, doctored conversations designed to resemble internal disputes and corrupt arrangements. They appeared authentic, nearly flawless. By third day, Caroline could barely check her phone without seeing her name smeared across timelines. But she didn't withdraw, didn't conceal herself. Instead, she appeared. She attended scheduled town hall in Casper, Wyoming, not televised, no media present, just ordinary citizens in folding chairs at middle school auditorium. Caroline stood without notes, a dressing room of approximately 60 people, older farmers, nurses, several disinterested high school students sitting rear row, chewing gum. She looked each person in eyes and said, "You've heard much about me this week, some accurate, some twisted beyond recognition. But what you must understand above all, is that I won't stop speaking truth simply because it contradicts someone else's narrative." The room grew quiet, not cold or skeptical, just attentive. An elderly woman, gray hair tightly pulled back, face lined with years of determination, stood and asked, "Aren't you frightened?"
These people clearly intend to destroy you.
Caroline nodded. "I'm terrified sometimes. But I'm more afraid of consequences if I remain silent. If fear dictates my voice, I never deserved standing here initially." That moment didn't become viral, no camera captured it. But it resonated, people remembered. Word spread gradually. Later that evening, back at hotel, Morgan approached Caroline's door holding printed report from cybersecurity firm, the kind nobody engages unless prepared for unvarnished truth. They traced original leaks, fake posts, video editing, everything. Caroline accepted report, reviewing pages until reaching final one. "What's this name?" she asked, indicating it. Alias used registering site hosting forgeries, Morgan replied.
Links back to consulting firm in Tempe.
But the funding, it originates from Washington.
Political money. Dark money. Caroline closet file.
So it was authentic. The campaign against her wasn't merely online chaos but funded, planned, executed purposefully. But Caroline had final move remaining, one that would force those behind it into light, or risk everything they'd constructed collapsing before them.